The calendar has turned to March, which means two things. Spring football previews officially begin today, and it's money time for basketball. Are we concerned about our shooting? I'm Rajiv. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, spring football preview season gets into full effect as we tell you our predictions for the offensive depth chart heading into the key offseason practices. What is our two deep at each position, and who is someone we want to see growth from this spring? After a blowout victory against Washington, the Badgers came back down to earth a bit with a loss on the road to Michigan State. The phrase in basketball, live by the three, die by the three, seems pretty relevant today after the Badgers' woeful shooting from beyond the arc. How big of a concern is this loss? And are we too reliant on the three ball? We are at the Bucky Report on YouTube and wherever you can find your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button so you know when we make new content. All right, Justin, I'm a little tired. I just got back from Hawaii literally hours ago. I was there for almost a week. So you haven't really seen much of me recently, and I couldn't even watch the game today. I was on the plane, and Southwest has, free live TV. Great. You know what? The only channel that wasn't working? CBS. So I had to watch ESPN live updates. It was ridiculous. But I watched the game when I got home. And obviously I didn't really miss that much other than a woeful shooting day, which we're going to get into. How are you, my friend? Long time. It's been a week since we've even chatted, since I've been in Hawaii.
Yeah, no kidding. You enjoyed some family time?
Sure did. And there's a lot of sun and good stuff.
I did not do any of that. I sat here. I'm coming off of a night of for whatever reason, just didn't sleep well. So I'm dogging it tonight. So we're gonna be high energy for you guys. We're gonna be killing it.
Well, we all will be high energy because we're gonna talk football, which is gonna be exciting. However, we're gonna start with basketball. The game was just today, Michigan State. Not that much of a surprise in the end. We did lose to Michigan State on the road. Again, did you see Michigan, by the way, got smoked by Illinois? It makes that Oregon game just embedded in my brain. I'm like, boy, that game.
If only.
We could literally be, even with a loss to Michigan State, we'd be still sitting in a position to tie for the conference. But lo and behold, that never didn't happen. So it is what it is. Not a great night. 5 of 32 from three. Overall, we shot 22 of 65. Not bad. Blackwell, 19 points. John Tonje, 11 points. Nolan Winter, 17 rebounds. We lose at Michigan State at the Breslin Center. Ultimately not a huge loss for us, but there are some burning questions that come out of that. So first, let me just start with, what were your overall thoughts on the game today?
I thought we looked tired. I think this is a game that if we shoot even average, we probably win this one going away. They were bad, man. They were awful shooting in this game. And because of that, they could never really pull away from Michigan State. And the crowd, to me, was the difference in this game. I think Michigan State really fed off them in the second half. And that was kind of what got them over the edge at the end when they needed it. In this game, Blackwell looked rough. He really was short on a ton of shots, but he was not the only person. I think they really missed Klesmet in this game. I think they really could have used that extra guy to kind of give everyone a little bit more of a spell. And I just think that he's been doing a pretty good job of getting downhill lately too, which is something that for whatever reason that for prolonged periods of time in this game, they just stopped and started settling for. A lot of them were open threes, but when you're not shooting well from the outside, you need to take opportunities to get a good offensive set in and get a good shot. And I realized most of the threes were technically good shots, but you want an easier shot in the circumstances when you're struggling the way we were. And I just don't think we did a good enough job of that in this game. There were way too many times where they settled because we were being baited into it by Michigan State.
You're right about that. There were good shots. A lot of them really were good shots. So we were 5 of 32 from 3 from 2-point, right? From inside the arc, we were 17 of 33, 17 of 33, over 50%, right? Like that's been pretty typical for us because we get a lot of shots at the rim. We get a lot of dunks, get a lot of good play from our bigs, but we are shooting quite a bit. 32% is not good. This 32 threes, only 5 made is not good. This game to me was all about missed opportunities. When I watched this game, I already knew the result. When I watched the game at home, I thought to myself, boy, like they were incredibly beatable. Michigan State was incredibly beatable, which again, you take the Oregon loss, you take this, and you're like, we literally could be Big Ten champions. I can't. I just can't with this.
I want to throw something at you real quick. Did you think there was anybody on their team that you thought was somebody that you had to be afraid of? I thought they ran pretty good sets, but I don't think there was anybody that I looked at and I'm like, they need to be aware of this guy because he's going to be a problem if he gets hot.
When I think so, first of all, Jace Richardson's one of those guys that just is always a really good 3-point shooter. But for me, Michigan State has always been and will always be, as long as Tom Izzo's there, a team that really knows how to turn it up defensively more than any team that I really have seen in the Big Ten year after year. You can look at their games this year, like, that ESPN graph they do, like kind of like showing you the score, right, of like how it trends. You can see these big flat lines that Michigan State's opponents have near the end of games because they really turn up the defense. And that to me defines a Tom Izzo team. And they've always got good athletes. They've got the ability to score in bunches. The Breslin Center is a very tough place to play. But I thought it was a bunch of missed opportunities. We obviously missed wide open threes, good shots. We missed a lot of layup dunks, like finishing at the rim. Blackwell happened a couple times. Winter happened. Crowell happened. I'm like, yikes. But I think your overall theme is right in that we just look tired. We look gassed. We look like we're just not there all the way. And this brings up, like, in general, I don't think this is a concerning loss, but I do think that some of the things we're beginning to see are a little concerning because at the end of the day, this is, as I said at the start of the show, this is the money time this is March. Like, this is when you come to play basketball. This is when the entire world is looking at college basketball, and we're going to have to figure out how to be a little bit better in these moments. But again, we're still in a fine position. We're 12-6 in conference. We've got 2 games left. We're going to finish in the top 5 for sure, top 4, maybe in the double bye situation, which we're going to get into that in a minute. But I mean, when you have John Blackwell, Kamari McGee, and John Tonje, 3 of the best 3-point shooters on the team, 2 of 20 from 3, they took 20 shots between them and they made 2. I mean, Kamari McGee, who's been like 54% guy, just starts now and all of a sudden his shot just looked way off. 15.6% as a team. It's not pretty. And you're never gonna win games like that. But are you concerned that we take too many, Justin? Do we take too many threes?
I don't think they take too many. I think you need to look at it. I think it's too general to say that. I think what you need to look at is when they're not going down, what do you do to kind of get yourself out of that situation? And today we just didn't do it. Like it was either boom bust. Like they just continued to take shots, which at some point I get it. But when you're tired, I just don't think that you're going to shoot yourself out of it. And that to me, like, there were a ton of short threes in this game. And when you see a team that's gassed, I just don't expect it to suddenly come back. It's not like you're, missing shots that are halfway down. You were short on the bulk of the shots that were coming off the front of the rim. They had air balls. Like, it's just, you have guys that just need to realize this isn't working. We need to find ways to kind of put pressure on them because right now we're struggling to be able to find the range.
Yeah. I mean, it's concerning. And I wanted to put up a graphic here that I did. Like, I'm not trying to find something to complain about. I just think it's interesting to look at the 3-point shooting right now as it relates to this season since the beginning of January. Okay. So this is all the games we played in 2025, started with Iowa on January 2nd, up until tonight, 16 Big Ten games. Now, a couple outliers here, the 67% 3-point shooting at Iowa, that's obviously a bit of an outlier, as was today's 15.6%. But you are seeing, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this graph I just put up, you see a slight trend in the negative direction overall. Now, again, This could be finding something. This could just be looking for something that's really not there. Look, we missed 3-pointers. They were good shots. Sometimes they seem forced, but in general, we've been hovering between 35 and 45% on the season. I mean, in per game. Right now, we're 38% in the Big Ten conference play, 37% overall. But the last 3 games have been under 33%. We had 25, then 33, then to 15. So it's not like we're still lighting it up from 3. We are falling down a tiny little bit. I'm not suggesting that we're a bad 3-point shooting team, but that does suggest fatigue, right? I mean, certainly. It suggests water finding its level with Kamari McGee not being able to shoot 54% anymore. Fine. It suggests to me that sometimes we're forcing threes when we don't need to, as we talked about. Like, we've shown now multiple games in a row where Crowell and Winter can be relied upon to score in the paint. Let's put them down there. Tanjay needs to get the ball more in the paint with his back to the basket. So I do think that this graph shows a little bit of something. I don't think we can take a lot out of it, but I do think it's important to note that we are seeing a slight downward trend. What do you make of this? Are you concerned about this at all, or do you think, just a couple bad shooting nights?
I need to see another couple more games before I'm really super concerned about it. But you can't be under 20%. Like, that's with the quality of shooters that they have. You should never be 15%. Like, today's game was just ridiculous. And I don't think that Michigan State's defense was that good that they should have been at this level. It's not to say they weren't solid on defense. Michigan State definitely was, but part of what it was is they packed it in and just made us were going to let us beat them from the outside, because we saw time after time where we came across the screen, had a wide open look, and guys just flat out missed. And we haven't had that this season. In fact, Tanjay's hit some ridiculously hard shots, and he was hitting just flat out missing wide open looks today.
Yeah, so, and that's gonna happen, right? Because like, he makes some insane shots. But let's get some comments. A lot of good comments here. I've started quite a bit. Ryan Willie says, if the Badgers basketball team wants to live and die by the 3, I see a first weekend exit. Your thoughts on this, Justin? Obviously, we are a live by the 3, die by the 3 type of team, at least right now.
I think people are making too much out of a game against a top 10 team.
Fair.
I don't think you're going to see a team remotely of the quality of Michigan State in the first weekend. So Wisconsin won't be playing like this. Like, they're going to be able to get to the rim. They're going to be able to do a lot more offensively against some of these other teams. Michigan State has athletes. Like, they were probably the most athletic team on the perimeter we saw all season. So people need to relax a little bit. We shot poorly. It's as simple as that. This game could be the outlier on the season. It's the first time we've been under 20% the entire season.
You're right.
People need to calm down a little bit.
I expect it to be an outlier as well. I will say this, though. Some of these mid-major teams can absolutely shoot the lights out. And ultimately, but here's the thing, Justin, if we shoot 15% or 20% in any game, we're probably going to lose. Yeah. It's not like, it doesn't matter who we play. I think if we shoot like this, we're going to lose a lot of games. Like, especially in the tournament when fouls get called very quickly, the other team can be in the bonus. I don't think we're going to lose in the first round. I will be devastated if we lose in the first round. But
I think we all would be.
I think that we are rather reliant on the 3. And I do hope that there's some adjustments made to kind of to put it more in the paint a little bit. Herb Herman says it boils down to this: team cannot just keep shooting early shot clock threes when they aren't falling, when there's no tomorrow. Must find other ways to put up points. Shot over 50% from 2 today. Yeah, I made that point earlier. I think that's critical. Will Hanna, in order to make any kind of 2 or 3 game run in the tournament, this team has to shoot well from 3, be comparable in the turnover and field goal attempt categories. I mean, there is obviously it's 3-point shooting and turnovers that does tend to define our wins and losses. There's no doubt about that. So I buy that we've cleaned up the turnovers lately. We turned the ball over 9 times today. We obviously had our 17 against Oregon. That hasn't been too much of an issue lately. Kevin says, I'm also concerned about another collapse in the last few minutes of the game, like the Oregon game. They did not show any composure again. It's a problem. What are your thoughts on that? I
thought we were just kind of like, once we got it wasn't last couple minutes thing to me. Like they pulled away in the last couple of minutes, but we seemed like we were kind of discombobulated the entire second half to me. Like we would have 2 or 3 good possessions and then go like 5 straight where we had a bad run and just would jack up bad shots. So there was no continuity in the offense to me in this game the whole time. I didn't take it as they faded. I think Michigan State executed a little better. I wasn't in love with our defense in this game. I thought at times we gave them 3 runs to the rim. The dunks that we saw late were just lazy defense. There were times when I saw guys like they would make the first kind of half-hearted jab at a guy, and if they didn't get the ball, then it was like easy finish for whoever.
Yeah,
that's how Blackwell do it a couple times in the first half. He was driving me nuts on defense.
That's been a problem for us all year, which we just know about that for sure. KPB also says they should have gone inside when threes are not falling. Is this on Gard or the players? I think this is on Gard. I've said that. I said that after the Oregon game. I'll say that again. I think that we do need to make a more concerted effort to pound the ball in there. And every TV timeout, like just keep the ball touching the post. Certainly, yes, the players, if they're going to shoot early in shot clocks, that's fine. But the message can be sent. And I don't know what the message is. Like, I'm happy with our offense overall. I sound like I'm complaining about the offense. Like, we had a bad shooting night. It is what it is. But I do think that you can, if you're talking on a Badger podcast, you can kind of look at this and say, well, I mean, are we concerned about it? So I think that's fair. Bo Dragon says every game Crowell dominates the first 5 minutes, then they stop going to him. It's idiotic. I've agreed with Bo on this. Like I said this before, Stephen Crowell has continued to shine, to do well inside the paint. And it's not like, in the Oregon game, they double teamed him at some point, but I think he needs to shoot more. I think we've all can agree that we need to score more from inside the post, because there are stretches of every game that we seem to do that constantly. And then there are stretches where we're just shooting up threes.
I don't disagree. I think they do need to make a concerted effort, especially in the way the second half started. I wasn't in love with the way we came out of the break offensively. Heck, I mean, you could say either side of the ball. I thought we were sloppy coming out in the second half, and I wish they would have made an effort to kind of start working the post again with him to kind of get themselves under control and kind of get some type of offensive flow going again. And we just didn't do that. We just kept settling for bad 3-point shots. It was really frustrating.
On the positive side, Nolan Winter, once again, so 17 rebounds. Justin and I are both looking at the stat line. He says 1 of 5 from 3, but we both think he made 2 threes. I don't know what happened.
I thought he did for sure.
I mean,
one of them was well behind.
Someone in the chat will correct us. Maybe one of them wasn't a 3, but nonetheless, 29 minutes, 17 rebounds, 9 points. He's playing more aggressive. He's being more physical. He's doing everything that we expect him to do. Has anyone else really shown more growth from where you thought they were going to be up until now? I mean, you've got to be pretty impressed with what you're seeing out of Nolan Winter.
Yeah, I think that he was the more aggressive one in this game. I thought actually defensively, all 3 of the bigs had their pluses and minuses in this. I thought Winter played with a lot of energy. I thought Gilmore was probably the most impactful defender. And I thought that Crowell was the one guy that was actually capable of kind of making their big uncomfortable. Although Joe Dirt, as I affectionately was calling their second big man, who I think just grabbed another offensive rebound. Nobody could do anything with him as driving Kohler. It was just killing me in the game watching him play. And I'm like, how is nobody able to body him up at all?
What's funny is that Winter had 17 rebounds. He could have easily had 20 because there were a couple that Kohler got right over the top. I'm like, dude, Winter, you gotta box him out, man. Like, I think there were 2 on the same possession, actually.
I don't want to call him soft. He's not strong enough yet. Like, those are rebounds that next year he'll get. But it's frustrating watching him not quite be there physically to be able to do some of the stuff that he'll be capable of when he matures a little bit more.
Yeah. Couple more quick points. Then I want to touch on a larger subject as it relates to basketball. Janicki took 1 shot. McGee took 8. I don't like that discrepancy with Klesmit out. Yeah. what are your thoughts on this? Janicki played 13 minutes. Kamari played 35. I heard some people on Ryan's show, I was still flying when he did that reaction show, I couldn't be on it, but talking about how Janicki should have started. I mean, that was a thought that a couple people had. Are you surprised that McGee got so many minutes that Janicki didn't play more?
Not really. I think that when me watching the game, I thought Janicki was a little overwhelmed athletically in this game. I thought he covered it up as best as he could, but there were times where I watched him try to overplay it because I think he was trying to play too fast to make up for the fact that he was not quite as athletic as the guys that he was covering. And that to me was a big part of why they were a little bit careful with him, because they didn't want him to start getting picked on. Just McGee is just so much better of a defender than him at this point.
Yeah. Herb Herman, good comments today from Herb. Feels like the team could go into posting up Blackwell on the block in order to pick up a cheap foul, just a shot fake, and smaller guard will bite. Yeah, I mentioned this earlier with Tanjay. Both of them, both of them need to post up more. I think that's kind of the theme that we all agree on is, yeah, the threes are great and we love them, and we're getting good shots and we need to keep taking them. But let's understand that there are times when you can punch it in a little bit more and force that in there, like force the ball into the post. If they're double team, fine, kick it out and shoot a three. I'm not going to complain about a kick out shot from the post, but dribbling up the court and shooting a three without touching the post just seems like something that we don't need to do when we're not hitting them, right? If we're hitting 60% from three, then fire away at will. But when you're shooting 15%, when your stars are 2 of 20, there probably needs to be some adjustment made. That being said, Justin, we're likely still going to finish in the top 4, which creates a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. We both have talked about fatigue. So I'm curious as to your thoughts on this and curious as the community's thoughts as well. Put your comments in. What are your expectations and what do you want to see out of the Big Ten tournament? Like, we're tired. We know the weekend after that is March Madness, starting on potentially Thursday, maybe Friday. That's not a lot of time off if we were to go deep into the conference tournament. Do you care about it? What are your thoughts on it? Do you want an early exit?
I do want an early exit because I want this team to go into the tournament with their legs under them. I don't think anyone is going to be happy if we make a deep run, lose in the final or whatever in the conference tournament, and then go in and get to the round of 32 and lose because this team is gassed. I think people will be irate if that happens because you played far too well this season to have that type of exit that early, especially with how prolific you were offensively. And if you burn yourself out with the conference tournament, and there will be some people that will say, well, it's a chance to win a Big Ten conference tournament title. And yeah, we need success in March because I can tell you right now, as great as it is to try and sell that, what is a lot more fun for the program to try selling is, hey, we made an Elite 8 run. That is something that resonates with recruits. I don't think conference tournament runs do. In fact, some of the teams I think actively do try to just get out of it and move on. Unless you're a team that actually has like a number 1 seed on the line and also like you have a chance for it to be just a really special year for your team. I don't see a lot of plus to that.
Yeah, I see. So for me, I see the conference tournament as a bridge, completely a bridge. It can be an assist to you. That's really it. Last year, we beat Purdue in the conference tournament, and it helped us get a better seed. Okay, just guaranteed for sure. That's just what happens. So to me, it serves only the purpose of potentially benefiting you or potentially hindering you as a seed in the NCAA tournament. Winning the conference tournament to me doesn't really mean much of anything. Winning the Big Ten regular season means a lot to me. Conference tournament, fine. It's a tournament. That's fine. It's a championship, if you will. If we win it, am I going to complain? No. We've won it in the past. Do I like it? Sure. But I'm not really bent out of shape about it. And I agree with you that we do need rest because we have seen the fatigue in this team. Mm-hmm. And if you have an early exit, and you get all that, now you basically have a week's plus full of rest. That's obviously really good. The one thing that I will say is that it can negatively affect you. So an early exit can negatively affect you. Herb Herman says, the only way I view it as important is if winning a game or two will allow us to play in Milwaukee. And,
I agree with that.
I know a lot of. Sorry, say that again.
I agree with that completely. I think you need to try and get the Milwaukee games because I think we've seen them before. It can energize you. Now, it doesn't always happen, but we need to remember the caliber of team I think this year's team is. I think this team can play with anybody, and if they get the crowd behind them, it will definitely impact how they play.
Right. And that's the thing. So I don't want to care about the Big Ten tournament. I would be fine losing early, except that it hurts you because just take away the tournament. That'd be fine for me. Just take it away. I don't need it. I don't want it. Like, yeah, you find, you know what they should do? All those teams that are double buys, just say, get out of the tournament, go rest. You're already in the NCAA tournament. You don't need to worry about it. Let the other teams play for a spot or something. I don't like that it hurts you. Because you're right. Like, and I know we haven't always had the most success in Milwaukee. I don't care. I've said this every week in the last few weeks. I don't care. I still want to play in Milwaukee. I would rather play in a place that has 75% Badger fans than a place that doesn't.
Didn't we play in Milwaukee in the Final Four years too? In the first couple of rounds? I thought one of the years we did. The Final 4 years under Ryan. I thought one of the years we played in Milwaukee.
I don't think so.
I don't either.
Think so. Someone will have to correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. I do know that we always were in the West region, which of course doesn't come into play in the first 2 rounds, but because I was at both of those games in Anaheim and LA, and then even in '99 went to the Final Four, we came out of the West.
Somebody said, people are saying 2014.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we get that makes sense actually because we were the number 1 seed. Of course, we were going to be in Milwaukee, right? If that was a pod, which it was, but I don't remember that. But thank you for clearing that up, community. So yeah, look, I want us to play well, but we don't need the games. We don't need the games, right? So whatever needs to happen for us to maintain the seed is what I want to do. Generally, that means win a game, right? Win a game, get to the semifinals. If you lose in the semifinals to Michigan State or Purdue or Michigan or Illinois, fine. I don't care.
That's not going to be viewed as a bad loss, so who cares?
Right. It shouldn't hurt your seeding. It's not a bad loss. You're absolutely right. So if we get by the first game, which will be likely up against like an 8 seed or not like an 8 seed, maybe like a 6 or something like that, right? A slightly lower team, depending on where we finish. Could be a 5. Then we can lose after that and be fine with it. But I am a little bit concerned that it will hurt us negatively, which we just don't want. We just don't want that. Like, and I don't, because at the end of the day, playing Milwaukee is important. Having a top 4 seed is really important because it basically means you're favored to get to the Sweet 16, but it definitely needs to happen. Any other notes on basketball before we move on to the other big sport?
No, I think that honestly, this team just needs to get their legs back under them and be ready to go again. It's fine. They're playing the toughest part of their schedule towards the end of the season, and it is what it is. I don't really care. Like I didn't think we were going to win the Big Ten this year anyways. And not that I didn't feel like we had an opportunity to later as the year went on, but that's not how we came into this season. So everything that we were hoping for to get out of this team is still available on the table. What we would like to see at this point is just simply, and I remember saying after we lost to Michigan early in the year, they're probably going to win it or one of those teams anyway. So I still think that's likely the case if we play them in the tournament. I think that we'd probably struggle with them in the conference tournament just because we don't have an answer for dealing with their bigs. They absolutely carved us up last time.
Well, hopefully we don't have to see any team like that in the NCAA tournament, and we can make a miraculous run to the Final
teams
Four.
Like that in the NCAA this year.
True. Quick programming note: we will be just like last year doing a March Madness special on Selection Sunday at night. That night. So Selection Sunday is generally in our typical live time around 5 Central, but we are going to be going probably in the evening. We'll break down the whole bracket, tell you where the Badgers are going to be, how far we think they're going to get. Full prediction show on Selection Sunday in just a couple weeks. We finish the season. We have Minnesota this week on Wednesday. Then we finish the season at home against Penn State on Saturday. Couple nice, easy wins, similar to Washington, right? I called that a very professional type of a victory. I'd like to see that. Go easy, take care of business here because listen, now you're playing 2 teams that would be bad losses, right? You don't want that. You don't want to lose either of these games because then
you have Klesmit back.
Like remember, we went 1-1 last week. We didn't move positions. We went 1-1 this week. We're probably still going to be 11th, maybe 12th, something in that range. We're still up there. Our net ranking is still really good. There's a lot of positivity going into the tournament. Don't spoil that by losing one of these couple games. All right, let's shift gears to football. Spring football is probably we don't have the exact schedule out, but it's likely, about a month away, a few weeks away. from really breaking into spring practice. Spring game has not been announced yet. Is that correct, Justin? Am I right in that?
I thought they mentioned, was it April 19th?
Was it April 19th?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they mentioned something about it. I don't think it's been confirmed for sure that it's a spring game, but we'll see. I thought they mentioned that they're having some type of fan day on April 19th.
Fan day. Okay. Well, but I haven't seen the full practice schedule unless you have for the spring yet. But nonetheless, it's coming soon. So we're going to do a little preview, talk about spring football next couple weeks, obviously, other than Selection Sunday, which will be all basketball. But we're going to start today with talking about the offense, right? So we know the offense is kind of the bell cow of the team, the part of the team that we feel like is going to be best. Well, at least I think so. New offensive coordinator, Grimes, is going to be installing his stuff into the spring, which is great. New quarterback, Billy Edwards, is going to be in. He's there for the spring. So let's break down our depth chart. Okay, let's talk through two deep, and as you mentioned, a player that you want to see some growth from at those positions. So we're going to go through the entire offense, talk to that, put your comments in. If you disagree with us on our depth chart, that's fine. I'm sure you likely will. Most positions are pretty clean, but there are a couple discussions that we're going to have. So let's start with the easy one. I think we all know who the two deep is at quarterback, Justin. Billy Edwards, Danny O'Neal, 1, 2. For me, what I'm looking for growth, like I'm all about looking for, I want to hear and see everything that they talk about Billy Edwards. There's not a lot of growth coming from Billy Edwards. I mean, but I just want to see what has to be said. I'm going to be on Nick Osen's every word, hanging on, like, what is he saying? Because that to me is going to define our entire season, is how Billy Edwards works within the Grimes system and with the rest of the team, because that's it, right? It's all about that. So I'm really excited to see what we see. Remember, at the spring game we were at a couple years ago, we saw Tanner Mordecai. That didn't look very pretty.
37 interception day.
Yeah, I mean, I really want to see clean. I mean, it's never going to be clean in the spring.
Rico's coming out party.
Some growth in the spring from Billy Edwards.
Yeah, I actually assume growth from him, and so I think he'll be a competent quarterback this season. Carter Smith is actually my guy. I want to hear that we actually have hit on a quarterback that they're seeing and hearing things that, yeah, this guy looks like he's, after a year or whatever, he's going to be ready to go and he's going to be a dude. And that is what I've been waiting for the longest time at Wisconsin. I mean, when was the last time we felt truly really good about a quarterback that we've heard things about? I don't even know if Mertz had like this huge, like, gurgling up of like hype that was coming out during the practices. There was talk, but there was nothing like he was like showing out. So I want to hear that this kid looks like he's competent and looks like he has control and looks comfortable in the system. If that's the case, then I think you've got an opportunity for him to be going into spring next year, like we're hopeful for out of this, him being a guy who can really start to push. And that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Fair point. Kevin says, just need Edwards to be average. Bo Dragon,
I think he'll give us more than
offense,
that.
Looking,
and not talking by Wisconsin standards.
Yeah, I mean, look, we needed an uptick. Obviously, Braidlock was nowhere near anything that we ever need at quarterback at this university, and I think we're going to see a nice uptick there. Running back, where are you on your running back? Too deep, and a player you want to see growth from?
Yeah, I think that the two deep for me is going to be obviously Dupree number 1 and Jones number 2. I think the wild card in there, kind of catch-all guy, is going to be obviously Yakimelli. I do think he gets a fair amount of reps. And I think the growth guy you'd probably say is I want to see Dupree look like the guy that we saw the high school film on, where he was just had explosive play after explosive play. I think it's there. I think the speed of the game is really going to slow down for him in this season, and we're going to see a ton out of him going forward.
I'm right there with you. Dupree 1, Jones 2, and Dupree is the guy that I want to see growth from. Like he obviously got the most reps out of any of these freshman guys, got way more than Dylan Jones. And, we certainly have talked about their potential to be kind of like a dynamic duo between the two of them. And of course you got Mr. 8 yards per attempt and Yakimelli back there. But yeah, right. I mean, it's time. Dupree, one of these guys needs to really take the big step. I think they both will, but I want Dupree I want to see those notes come out of spring practice saying, yeah, like he's the guy. Yeah. He's He's absolutely picked up a step. He's seeing the hole stronger. He's hitting the holes better. Like, I do think that a stronger and more consistent Dupree really, really could spell a lot of success for the offense. And Grimes requires that in his offenses.
I realistically want to hear both he and Jones are pushing each other. That's what I would like to hear come out of this spring. But I think Dupree is the one that you have to have one guy that does. And I think I trust Jones's skill set to translate more. I think that he's going to be, like I've said before, he's the consistency guy where I think you're going to get that type of hard running out of him. Dupree is the guy that has the chance to be kind of the X factor in the offense and be the guy that has those burst plays where you're like, all right, he does a little something special in the open field in space and really makes guys struggle with him. And that's why I need to see Dupree turn into that.
All right, so the next one's going to be, I think, interesting, and this is where we're going to really be, hanging on the words of this coming out of the spring is wide receiver, because there's a fairly crowded room there. Give me your wide receiver, sort of X, Y, like your two outside guys in your slot. Give me all of them. Give me like your full on two deep, because then it's like we'll kind of flush it out from there.
This will be really interesting to me because I think that people can take the depth charts that we've seen the last couple of years and throw them out the window. There's two guys that I'll say are locked in. Obviously, it's going to be Tretch and Vinny Anthony. Vinny is he's the most experienced guy we have. He's the guy that on the outside is our deep threat. If I was to take a guess right now, I think that there's a chance it's going to be Ballard. But I think Hamper's got a chance to be an opportunity to push on that other side. I just need to see how he translates coming up a level. So we'll see if he's ready to play at this level. He is obviously, from a statistical standpoint, far more experienced than what Ballard is. Ballard obviously has the freakish actual, physical tools. I don't know if that will translate or not, but when you see a guy is running a, 22 plus range at times already, there's something that adds something to the opposite side, having him and Vinny out there at the same time.
Yeah, so I agree with you on Vinny and Tretch, of course. My other guy, I think we can't sleep on Joseph Griffin. Don't sleep on him.
I don't disagree with that.
So he's I had a hard time with this. Like, so I put Vinny and then Quincy Burrows as 1-2 for one side, and then I put Griffin and Ballard and Hamper, all three of them, as kind of like any one of those guys could be the 1, 2, or 3. Honestly, I mean, that's why this is one of the big storylines going into spring is who's going to show out from a receiver perspective, because we did see Griffin last year because of his health. Ballard obviously is an Ohio State guy who didn't really show out at Ohio State, but what can he do here? And Hamper is a guy who really did produce, but at a much smaller school. So there's kind of like a mix of all three of them. My guy, and of course, KBJ backing up Tretch, by the way, at the slot. My sort of X factor guy that I want to see growth from is Chris Brooks, because here's another guy that we talk about a lot. He has got physical tools that a lot of the guys don't have. And last spring, we read a lot of good things about Chris Brooks, and then we never saw him. And so he's a guy that I think could break into this. Like, we're looking at this right now, and I think Vinny and Tretch are right, but who the other starter? Could be Ballard, could be Griffin, could be Hamper, could be Brooks, could be any of those guys, could be Burrows for all we know. This room is out there for the taking. If you're in this room right now and you're trying to get on the field, this spring is going to dictate that. Like, it's out there. There are not starters locked down in a lot of these spots, and it's really going to depend on who shows out and who took that step. And I think we can't sleep on Joseph Griffin.
I think, that looking at Grimes, I legitimately do believe he'll play whoever he thinks will be effective for him.
I agree completely.
I will say, when it comes to blocking, I think that I trust Brooks the most, being out there, being able to blow people up and block. We'll see about the other guys. I think that it's going to be really hard to not fall in love with Ballard's speed, though, on the outside, and thinking of like how him and Vinny can stretch the field and give Tretch space underneath to kind of work in the middle of the field. And especially if you can put Kojal out there with them too, like that's a really athletic, fast group that's out there able to create a ton of room to work.
Yeah. I mean, Ballard's got the speed, but his route running at Ohio State wasn't always the best. And I think if you're going to have Vinny out there on one side, he's kind of that speedster. I think you need a guy that can run proper good routes, which is why then I think Hamper, you can look at him because he's a very heady, experienced receiver. And you're thinking, well, physical, I could definitely see Hamper being that guy. He's a better route runner, really a little more crisp. So it is really, to me, it's one of the more fascinating storylines that's left as far as the offense, because, and of course, the line too, which we're going to get into in a minute. But yeah, a lot of discussion there for sure. Tight end seems pretty clean. Koziel 1, Ashcraft 2.
I would say
do you see any difference?
I think that there's going to be probably a difference in how they use them. Koziel is obviously going to be your receiver, and I think Ashcraft and probably trying to think of who else you'd put behind him for guys
Seagraves,
that are more
maybe.
Blocker. Seagraves can be out and split out wide too. He'll be interesting. He's a guy that could actually push and make some noise, because I think this offense is going to be a better fit for him in terms of being able to kind of showcase his skills. I do think Ashcraft is going to be able to be used more as that guy who kind of leaks out and finds space. And Koziel is going to be the guy who you actually are looking for as a receiver threat.
Do you think that any of the freshmen get into this at all? Whether it's Grant Steck, Booker.
He's the guy that I'm looking at for growth, honestly. I want to see Steck force his way into there, because I think there's room. I don't think any of these other guys outside of Koziel that I look at and I'm like, this is a guy who has a firm grasp on what they're doing. Now, I will say this about the tight end room. I don't know what we have there, because I know that it was mismanaged by what we did last year offensively. I don't really think that we looked to try and showcase the tight end group at all, because I think we wanted to try and showcase the wide receivers, but the offense was just a mess altogether. So I don't know how much of that was quarterback play and how much of that is you just don't have anything at that position. Same thing with wide receiver. Like Vinny Anthony looked really good. Like if he had a good quarterback last year, how good would his numbers have been?
And his numbers are pretty good.
For 800 yards.
His numbers are pretty good with Braden Locke.
Yeah.
So you're totally right. I mean, Tanner Koziel is the guy, right?
And a running game that was completely all over the place. So
Tanner Koziel with 94 catches last year. That's just he really could be the engine that gets this thing to just run so well.
I think he's the safety valve.
I mean, the sort of the possession receiver you've got this big, really good receiving tight end. You've got a really talented, speedy slot receiver. You've got an outside guy that's coming back. Then you've got a group of outside guys. Like there's a lot of potential here. Ultimately, our success is going to depend on the quarterback and the guys up front, which we're very high on, the guys up front. Give me your starting 5 offensive linemen.
Well, left tackle is obviously going to be Haywood. Then I'd say Brunner at left guard. Center is obviously Renfro. Right guard, I'd have Emerson Mandel, if it's me personally. And then you're going to obviously have Riley Mahlman at right tackle.
So the only thing that I've got different, I've got Haywood, of course, Brunner, Renfro. I've got Benchawal at right guard, and then Mahlman at right tackle. I think Mandel is a backup for Benchawal and can kind of be a swing.
How dare you?
I mean, well, listen, hey,
I'm projecting, so it's okay.
By the way, the next part of my answer is you'll like. And then Nelson, whether it's Barrett or Leighton, I think they're going to kind of be the tackles that back up both sides. Cubberly most likely is another guard in the 2 deep, and then Corey is my backup center. That's kind of where I'm at with the line. But the player that I'm interested most in is Mandel. I already expect a step from Kevin Haywood. That's not a surprise. He, even Jack Nelson talked about him at the combine the other day. I mean, my gosh, like he's going to be great. Emerson Mandel, though, that's the guy I'm looking for growth, because you're right. He absolutely could find himself in that starting 5. He's
absolutely like 320, and he's such an athlete at that position. Like that's the type of guy that you look at, that when we talk about interior guys, you're looking at some legitimate top tier Wisconsin guards. That's his ceiling. Like he is a guy that could come out of this, be a first 2 round type guard by the time all is said and done. I just think that the ceiling for him is so incredibly high. Now, we'll see about his pass sets. That's going to be something to be interesting. Center is obviously the position that I'm most concerned with. I don't think you can – I don't want to walk in as my backup center. I want them to have that position locked down. If that's Ryan Corey or it's whoever, get somebody in that position that you trust to be able to play that position and be functional.
I think they will. The offensive line room is pretty stacked. And Doc, I know you're in this, listen to the show. I'm curious to see your thoughts on Mandel. Put him in the chat. Yeah, look, I think Mandel is the guy that's going to be the question mark, right? That's the one that I'm like, could we have a new guy? Because look, I'm nothing against JP Benchwall. Like, I think he's a fine player, but he's no Joe Huber. Like, he's not. And the guard, the right guard position is really important. Or we obviously have a great left guard. But, like that, I do think that's kind of a position out there for the taking. And if Mandel can be the guy to step into it, then that would be impressive. Is there anyone else that you feel like you were looking for growth from, or is it Mandel?
I think he's going to be ready to play, which is why I'm projecting him. I'm basing this heavily off of, I think that he's got the mindset for it. And I think he's the type of athlete that even if his technique isn't perfect, I think that he's a guy that's going to be able to win. I questioned some of what was left in the room prior to these last couple classes being in there, because we haven't really heard any of these guys flashing and getting playing time. And I think you're looking at like Benchwall's like what, a redshirt junior now? I think so. Now he's had some injury issues too. So some of these guys have had some time where they've been kind of
He's a senior. He's a senior.
Okay.
Yeah. This is his last year of eligibility. Yeah.
So I don't buy this. They're definitely not going to just put somebody out there just because they're a senior. They're going to play the best line they can, because our bread and butter is going to be running the football this year. And I think that he's going to want the best athletes that he can get out there. So if they're capable of executing better with Mandel out there than somebody like Benchwall, I think they're going to do it. I really like the athleticism of the last couple classes. And I think that that's where you're going to start to see it. Now we'll see. I do think Benchwall is going to be kind of like a swing guard. And he's probably going to be the guy that spells everybody, but I don't know if I believe that he is more talented than what some of these young guys are.
So of the other young guys, we talked about Corey, we talked about Mandel. Anyone else that you feel like even the freshmen, freshmen don't often touch the line. Kevin Haywood was an exception, of course. He's pretty special. So he got in some reps at left tackle. Do you expect any of the freshmen, some of the whether it's the Davenports, the Watts, these guys, do you expect any of them to find their way into that 2D at any point?
We're clearly going to have somebody who's our swing tackle. I don't know who that is yet. It's not going to be one of the freshmen, but I do think they're going to be listed on the 2 deep. I just don't think they're going to be the guy if somebody goes down that's going to go in. Well,
it's probably going to be Leighton Nelson, right? Or
I would guess if he's back and healthy. Yeah. I'm assuming he's going to be ready for spring here. He got injured last spring, correct?
Yeah.
So I would assume he's going to be back. If that's the case, then hopefully you can get him comfortable. But I think he's the guy that you probably want as your swing tackle. He's already worked with Blazik, so he's a guy who understands his techniques and it will hopefully be ready to roll. I think he's capable there. I really like the group that's coming in. I just don't love the idea of them relying on them, and if push comes to shove. You know my stance on it. I think they have all the talent in the world. I just don't want somebody that is not necessarily locked in technique-wise to be kind of thrown to the wolves in the Big Ten.
Do you think Leighton Nelson challenges Haywood for left tackle? I don't either.
I think that Haywood has got a better than average chance of pushing for the all-conference teams this year.
Wow. I mean,
I think that physically he's got that level of tools that if this offense runs the football the way I think they're capable of, he's going to have an opportunity to really show out.
Yeah. I'm excited about this offense, man. I'm excited about it. I really do think, again, we saw the Tanner Mordecai spring that turned out to be not so good, right? I want to have excitement coming out of the spring from the quarterback position. and really just from the offensive production perspective. And there have been a lot of comments in here. I know Bo Dragon said Grimes QBs are game managers. And then he
I don't agree with that.
Well, but I would say this. He put another comment up there, and I can't find it anymore. But he talked about how in Longo's system you needed to have a superstar quarterback versus Grimes, not necessarily game managers, but like the upside can be there, but you don't necessarily need to be like to have a star quarterback for it to be successful. I think that's
well,
where
I would agree with that.
I kind of agree with that.
It's a scheme that is capable of being. It's very versatile. I will say this. I think that you're going to have opportunities to show out at quarterback in this. I watched Kansas a lot last year. He takes a lot of deep shots, like a lot of deep shots. We talked about it. I think we all saw last year, the last couple of years of Longo, we're like, why are we never throwing the ball down the field? That is not the way that Grimes runs offense. It's a lot of crossers, a lot of mesh, and then he will take a ton of play action shots downfield. Like I'm talking 5-6 times a game, you're going over 20 yards shots. So he's going to take opportunities to go after stuff, and he's very creative in the way he does things. So there will be my biggest hope that I have this year is that we see some of those. Remember the good old years when we'd see Wisconsin receivers with 3 steps on somebody running deep? I'm praying that we see some of that again this year, finally, in a system. I do think that it's with some of the deception and movement that he has on his play calling, with all the motion and all the shifts that he does, I think you're going to have some miscommunication plays where guys break loose. And I think there's a couple of guys that are athletic enough to be able to create that kind of separation.
I think you're going to see a lot of guys break loose with yards after the catch too, with those mesh routes, the mesh patterns that he runs. Guys
I
like
love
Koziel,
seeing his trip sets with the tight end out.
Yeah,
I was
guys
like, this
like
is a
Koziel
genius way to do this.
And Tretch, like, you know how many catch and runs Tretch is going to have out of the mesh? Like, it's going to be beautiful. He's going to have run crossers. They're going to hit him. He's so fast. He can turn the corner quickly. Like, there's a lot to be excited about.
Didn't you find it funny? We said that we were running that type of system last year. I don't recall a ton of mesh.
I feel like I never hardly saw it at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, we also didn't have the quarterback to really read it. But you don't even need to. Like, it's a mesh. It's simple. It's a simple read, right?
Basically, you're rubbing and trying to create separation by getting in the way of the corners.
And that's the thing. The one thing that I always say, like, we talk about the offense a lot, but one thing that we notice, and we also noticed that individually when we were at the games, our receivers weren't getting a lot of separation, just in general. Like we might have overstated the athleticism that those guys had. Now, I still believe Kekahuna can be that guy. We know Vinny certainly was that guy. Are the other guys going to be able to get that separation? Koziel certainly can. We know that because he's done that. So I think that's going to be the big X factor. Receiving is going to be the question mark. That's who's the receiver? Who are the receivers going to come out in spring? Whether or not they're really showing that they can be athletic enough and make those differences, because the offense should be far improved. There's no doubt about that.
I think that's the biggest thing we want to hear coming out of the spring, is that this offense looks like it's going to be competent. I have high hopes for that, because I do think that this is a much more difficult offense to prepare for defensively. The more I watch Longo's offense, it seems so boom bust in terms of production. And it's weird that we early in the season, when we had Van Dyke, were such a methodical team when it's that type of offense, because you don't expect it. But everything seemed like a 5-yard pass, like it was 10 yards or less. That's not what this offense is. Like the crossers and stuff like that, anyone who watched Kansas play last year under Grimes, it's a lot of like 10-yard plus type patterns. There's a lot of there is stuff under 10, but there's a lot of intermediate passing game in this, that you're going to be having guys running crossers at different levels trying to get guys open. And Tretch has got an opportunity here to put up big yards, and I think Koziel is going to be used kind of in a similar way. Luke Grimm was their big receiver last year. He is a guy who had 60 catches. You're probably looking for something like that. It's going to be probably split across Koziel and Tretch. I think they're going to eat into each other a little bit, because I think that that's just the way they're going to set it up. They're probably going to split out Koziel and take Tretch off the field in situations where they like their matchups better. But that's probably how this is going to play out. Like, I think he gets to 40 and Koziel probably gets 40 or 50. So combined, you get 90 catches between the two guys.
Yeah, that'd be fine production. I've gone back and watched a lot of Kansas games since the Grimes hire. But let me tell you, even during the last couple of years, Justin really does watch a lot of Kansas football. It's kind of crazy. He's in love with Lance Leopold. He really likes him. And
Dude,
he does watch a lot of Kansas. So
watching them run the football has been incredible. Like when they're running it well, everything is 8 yards.
That'd be great. We'll end on here. Herman says, this is the year the football team exceeds increasingly low preseason expectations. Bar set very low, but we've improved in important positions. Yeah, we definitely have. Next week, we're going to talk about the defensive depth chart because that obviously is a big discussion on the defensive line. A lot of pieces going on there. Then we'll get into some big storylines before spring happens, after March Madness, and all the craziness there. Any last thoughts, Justin, before we close the show today?
Let's just honestly take the film and chuck it from today's game. Get the guys healthy, get them rested, and let's finish out this season strong for basketball.
We need to not be afraid of going to the post more. That's my number one message that I feel like I keep thinking and saying on these shows. I'm like, John Tonje, John Blackwell, get him in the post. Nolan Winter, like we can play from the post. If you need to call Bo Ryan and have him come to one of the practices and talk about it, do that. But it needs to happen because that will open things up for the three even more than they already have. I agree with you. Let's not be too distraught about it. We did complain about the basketball team a lot today just because we shot poorly, and that's fair. It's an emotional reaction
to their potential.
Right. It was the day of, but I will just say, like, there's a lot to be excited about here, a lot to be excited about. March is coming, and, I still think this team has a Sweet 16 sort of written all over it with potential to do a bit more. We will leave it there. Be back again next week to talk more about basketball. The end of the regular season is next week. And of course, defensive preview for spring football. And we will talk to you all again next week, as always, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.